Y'all both looking sharp today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Y'all look sharp every day, though.
Aren't you kind? Aren't you kind? I attended the First Lady's luncheon today, so. Sorry, no, I mean, I dressed up for you, Cornice. That's what I meant to say.
Thank you. Thank
Oops,
you.
that slipped. What I meant to say was,
The secret's out.
what had happened was, Maggie's on a train and trying to call in when she gets reception. Sorry for the delay, everyone. Ready, gavel in hand. Your gavel's not as nice. My gavel's not as nice as yours. Same gavel. Is it? It's the same thing, yeah. Are you joining the executive committee call? It's after 3. Forget it.
Sorry, Gretchen is here.
One more and we can.
My goodness, you both are all suited up today.
You're good to go, Reggie. Kimber's here.
I see. Kimber? Juanice, you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
And Gretchen? Hi.
I'm here.
Good. I have to hear Kimber's voice when I call the roll call. She still has to. Kimber, you there?
Yep, I got it. I figured it out. I'm on.
You're here?
Yes.
Good. The meeting will come to order. The time is now 3:09 p.m. on Wednesday, May 17th, 2023. This is a meeting of the Executive Committee of the District of Columbia Commission on the Arts and Humanities. My name is Reggie Van Lee, Chairperson of the Commission. I am wearing a light gray suit, white shirt, and multiple colored blue tie. And I will now call the roll. When you hear your name, please answer present. Maggie Fitzpatrick.
Present.
Juanice Ford.
Present.
Kimberly McKitty. Kimber.
Present.
Hector Torres. Gretchen Warden.
Present.
And I am present. A quorum is present. This is a meeting of a public body held in open session in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. Notice of the meeting was posted on the Commission's website, dcarts.dc.gov, and on the DC Office of Open Government's Central Meetings calendar. The meeting is being conducted remotely using the Cisco Webex virtual meeting platform and is being live streamed to the Commission's YouTube channel. An electronic recording of the meeting will be available for viewing online following the conclusion of the meeting. I will now read the land acknowledgement. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will, some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life, and some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. Excuse me. We stand on the ancestral lands of the CAH and the Piscataway people. We pay respects to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events and to use such truths to guide the legacy of the Arts Commission. So the agenda, as you see, is short. We want to talk about the FY 2023 budget spending plan and an update on the foundation and an update on where we are with the May 19th Art Week event stakeholders meeting, which is at the end of this week. So why don't we start with the fiscal year budgeting, fiscal year 2023 budget spending plan. So is that Kimber or Brian or who's going to lead us in that? Or David or?
Sorry, Brian is out of the office, so I was going to give a brief overview. Yeah. So we're 7 into the year, and we have a better sense of where we are in our spending. So every year at this time, we look at any unspent funds in the various grant categories. This year, there are funds remaining in both the general operating support category and then the larger bucket, the arts and humanities bucket, which includes a lot of our project-based grants and the fellowship grant. And we do have some personnel savings at various points during the year. Folks come and go and positions remain open. So there are some savings there. And then the third category that we usually have some savings in is the administration and contracts savings. So contracts that weren't realized during the year. So coupled with looking at those three categories, we look at how our dedicated tax revenue is trending. Aaron and I met with our colleagues at the Office of the Chief Financial Office this morning. And so far, 6 months into the year, we are trending on track for dedicated tax revenue. So we have a sense of how much money we might have to push out in the form of additional grants for this year, FY23. But before we dig into that, I thought it would be good to look back to this past fiscal year, FY22, to look at the various categories that we funded and the total dollar amount spent and so on. It does come with a caveat that last year we had a lot of additional money. We pulled a lot of money from the fund balance. And so you'll see here in this table that we pushed close to $10 million of additional funding out the door at this time last year.
Excuse me, David, could you address,
Yes.
in this summary, could you address why we had the outstanding amounts in the grants?
For the current year, for FY23?
Why is there money left over in the grants?
Yeah, of course. So I mentioned that there are monies in two categories: the general operating support category and then the arts and humanities category. So the budget, 54% of our grants budget for FY23 amounts to about $20 million. We initially awarded $19.5 million at the start of October. And then there were two organizations, for different reasons, returned their grants to them, just changes in their own priorities. So they returned between them about $200,000. So there's about seven. Sorry.
You're gonna have to be a little more specific. Why did they return them?
So one organization was cultural tourism, and cultural tourism merged with Events DC in the fall. And because Events DC is a quasi-government agency, they returned their funds to us.
Okay.
The second organization, Pointless Theatre, they were reassessing what it was they were doing and sort of powering down, as it were. And so we did not ask either of those organizations to return the funds. They came to us and returned their funds. So that left in total about $700,000 in the general operating support pot. With the Arts and Humanities Fund, we went into the year knowing that there would be some additional monies in those categories. We funded all of the project-based grant programs pretty robustly last year, most of them in excess of what was budgeted going into the year. But as we received applications and as each grant manager presented the recommendations to the commission at the September commission meeting, we were able to fund everyone that the grant managers felt deserved funding, just based on their project grants. With the fellowship grant, we had already added a significant amount of money to the budget last year. So the budget for the fellowship grant for FY23 was $3.1 million. So that's why we have monies left in both of those categories. The facilities and buildings grant, that the $6.3 million that was budgeted for that grant program has been fully spent between the traditional part of the grant that was announced in November, and then more recently the facilities and buildings relief section. We've spent down all $6.3 million of that specific cohort. And then the fourth cohort is Humanities DC, and they received their entire 4%, which was the equivalent of $1.482 million.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So yes, as I said, I thought it was important to add this chart from FY22 to remind everyone how we spent additional dollars last year. There were four categories. There were general operating support enhancements, and we've issued enhancements to existing general operating support grants for several years now. Last year we had 144 grantees, and between them, they received close to $5 million in enhancements. And then you'll see in the notes section over on the right-hand side that the awards ranged between 16.5% and 61.5% of original awards. So the organizations that whose original awards were the largest awards received a 16.5% enhancement, and the organizations that had the smallest awards received a 61 up to 61.5% of an enhancement to their original award. And as you'll see, the average award was just under $34,000. Something else that we decided to do last year, and it was part of, it was a focus area that Reggie was very keen for us to advance, was the whole idea of capacity building. And so Terrell is on the call. Terrell, I don't know if you'd like to speak to what we did with the 88 organizations and with the capacity building initiative, just to give a better sense of that.
Absolutely. So with the capacity building program, we had 8 cohorts, and the cohorts range for things like board development, succession plans, marketing plans, all of these different areas that we offered. And with that, when you think about a community of practice, it's the theory that we all go into how to solve a problem together, and we will get more done as a unit versus if we did it one by one. So we had really great feedback. We had 88 organizations that joined. So we had our lead organizations, or our backbone organizations, which provided supports like scheduling the meetings of the contractors, and they set up the meetings and all of those type of things. So it was great feedback and something that we're looking to continue. So
great. And Terrell, the only thing I would add to that is that while we were, funding, these facilitators and contractors to work with our grantees, we fully understand that organizations, big and small, are working really, really hard. And so we wanted to ensure that we were putting some money behind it. So they, in turn, if they're executive directors or leadership, were participating in these capacity building initiatives, that there was some money being given to their organization so that they could support themselves and possibly put additional personnel in place to allow them to participate, rather than expecting them to do more with the same. The 2 other pieces that we funded last year, there were 2 relief and recovery programs. We are still very aware that the industry is taking a long time to recover. And so we were able to push out a relief and recovery grant for individuals, very similar to our fellowship grant, except rather than it being based on are externally paneled and based on sort of several criteria, including artistic merit and that type of thing. They were sort of pass or yes or no categories, that if the artists were able to demonstrate that they were indeed artists, whether they were working or trying to work, that we were able to push them into the yes category. And as you can see there, we funded 93% of those who applied, and they each received awards of $7,000. The previous year, the awards to 266 individuals came in at $5,500 each. And then the relief and recovery portion for organizations was a new grant for us, again, similar to the one for individuals, but for organizations. And it was for organizations that were either brand new to the commission or organizations that had not been funded in the current at the time was the FY22 or the previous year cycle. So of the 22 awardees, I think there were maybe 3 or 4 that had been previous grantees, but were just not funded in the earlier part of FY22. And the other 17 or 18 were brand new organizations to us, and a very diverse group of organizations, which was really great. So we were able to onboard them to CAH. And as it says there, the average award was $18,000. As I said, this was really important, I think, to sort of help frame, how we move forward for FY23. Aaron, if we can, thanks, move down the screen. Aaron, I don't know if you'd like to speak to, the amount of money that we anticipate having, and how it is different,
Right.
significantly different to last year.
Yeah, right now, we'll have about $2 million in excess, or money that we could push out in some type of way. I hesitate to say 2.5 because that was not, after the call we had this morning, that was not quite firm, but it was a firm 2 million at least that we could be able to repurpose here. And if we needed to repurpose the money in a sense, moving it from one space to the other, we would need to get that modification in to the council so that we could have the council approval, of course, at the particular moment. Brian is on vacation until as we had our meeting this morning, we'll have a little bit more understanding once he does return exactly what other parts, meaning did he move some of the full-time employees that we had scheduled, did he move some from the employee savings from people who had not been working here quite yet? Would we be moving money from that part over to grants, things of that nature? I know we were trying to get a little clarity before he left, but once he comes back, we'll know exactly how that number came about. But from the meeting we had this morning, it's a firm $2 million that we'll be working with.
And if I can add here, my intention around this meeting was for us to create collectively a wish list, a prioritized wish list. And we could have a wish list that's $5 million long,
Right.
as long as it's prioritized. Once we know what the number is, we'll know the line will cut off. But for us to have had a more fulsome discussion across the committee chairs for funding that you'd like to make a request for, if we decide that we have it in a prioritized way. Which is it's a 2 million-ish, but at the end of the day, I think the wish list would be the wish list. So I didn't see any submissions from anybody. I don't know if any of the committee chairs submitted on behalf of their committee a wish list, but David, do you or Aaron know any more about that?
We didn't receive anything. I didn't receive anything from any of the other committee chairs. I know that internally, we did, Lauren, Terrell, David, myself, we did meet to see exactly from an equitable standpoint, how we can stay true to that spirit, as far as what would it look like if we were to do some of the things that we did last year as well. We did make a point that so that we would be in front of this next year if we came in this spot again in the following year, some things that we want to look at, perhaps not this year.
So, but can I start and just see let me go committee by committee and ask the question. So let's start with public art. Maggie, is your sense of any sort of need that would benefit the work of your committee that we could put on this wish list?
No, Reggie, I don't know if anything top of mind was mentioned to me, but I'd be really interested in hearing from Aaron, since he's been so close to the arts community, about critical need in the community and whether we could fund, individual grants.
And Lauren's on the call as well, right?
Yes.
Yes, I'm here.
So is your sense in the public art space in particular, if we had extra money, where you feel we should try to spend it?
Yes, I think we talked about that in our meeting and identified ways in which we could enhance grants. And so I think Aaron has covered that.
Well, but we didn't hear dollar amounts. So if you had extra money How much more would you want in the public art space?
I don't know that there's a set number, Reggie, this late in the year, it's hard to say there's a program we can fund and move forward with it. I think the thought of enhancing those who have already received grants from us this year and with the relief fund is an easier way to go. It's just hard to create a program. And with a lot of the projects, either they're completed or they're almost done. And so enhancing projects become complicated because then they have to spend the money by the end of the fiscal year. So I think as the proposal was put forth, that's the most equitable and easiest way to facilitate use of the extra money.
Okay, Juanice, an idea committee?
Yeah, I'm not the best with email, so I apologize if I didn't submit anything ahead of time. But I know we've talked a number of times around having a funding program specifically for Black, Indigenous, and people of color artists, arts administrators, and arts organizations in DC. And in regards to number, it would be good to start off probably with like 750 to $1 million. I'm just putting numbers out there, specifically for that equity, right? We're talking about folks who have been historically marginalized and who haven't necessarily had the immediate access to these funds. So we've been talking about this for quite a while, but I just wanted to kind of uplift that again. And then the second piece of that is we've had some initial conversations about a DC Youth Arts Summit, because we're seeing a lot of things happening with our students and our kids out here, and we want to make sure that we're supporting our kids and creating more opportunities for them to engage in the arts work. And so that would be probably about 500,000. I talked to Hector, and I was supposed to talk to Brian, but I think Brian might have went on vacation before I was able to connect with him. But that would be about 500,000 that we would hope happen for DC youth.
Okay. And okay, good. Kimber, anything in the finance area? Kimber, are you still with us? Hector's not here, but who could speak on art education? Well, and Brian's not here to talk about.
Oh, can you hear me? Sorry, guys. I was
Yeah, no
trouble with my
problem.
mute. Yep, that's
Yes,
we
we
don't
can
have
hear you.
anything additional. I think we're just kind of sourcing it all together, but we don't have anything. We don't have a specific request from finance.
Okay. Is anybody here could speak to arts education in Hector's absence? Any staff member? I'm sorry.
You said for arts education.
Arts education. I'm just going through the committees. Gretchen on grants. Gretchen? Did we lose Gretchen? So my math says, from what we heard, we're at 1.25.
Sorry, I had to call back in. Something happened.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I was asking any wish list items from grants?
No, Terrell and I had planned to talk after this meeting. We didn't have a grants committee meeting because we weren't sure what to say in terms of relief or where the money might be needed. But now that we have an amount, I would think we would have a grants committee meeting to see if there's a wish list from any of the other members. I personally don't have any, other than to clean up some of the outstanding financial problems we have.
Right.
So I think that would be a good start.
So my math says if I look at the 750 to $1 million from the BIPOC sort of fund or grant, new grant, and the DC Youth Arts Summit, that's $500,000. So it's 1.25 to $1.5 million, not including any public arts enhancements and not including any other grant enhancements. Is that where we are at this moment?
It sounds like just from suggestions from the wish list.
Are you asking me?
No, I'm asking the group.
Oh.
if that's the list, and I know the staff has some ideas, and we defer to your largely anyway. If we had this money, would this group endorse spending that $750,000 to $1 million on BIPOC fund and the $500,000 on the DC Youth Arts Summit? Is that, as an executive committee,
What's the BIPOC fund? What's it entail?
do you want to talk about it, Quanice?
Yeah, we've talked about it quite a number of times about creating a bucket for specifically, because we've been talking about equity and doing equity work. And, basically the data says that, historically marginalized communities around DC are the least supported financially. And that's not just with the commission, but in the philanthropic sector in general. And so we had a number of conversations. I think, Gretchen, you and I probably had some conversations too about creating a program specifically for Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are artists, arts administrators, and arts organizations to support them.
Yeah, we did, but specifically, we
Mhm.
did, that was a while back, and pardon my brain, but
Mhm.
what specifically would it be for? I mean, what would be the categories? Because we did talk about that part,
Well,
yes.
we talked specifically about general operating because we recognize that programmatic funding can often be barriers for organizations of color because they often don't include staff time. They often don't include, any type of additional like employee benefits when they're including these budgeting applications, budget grant programs or whatever. But we talked about specifically being a general operating program. And then we also had another conversation about a sabbatical program, which I don't think we've really gotten into, but yeah, that's kind of
The G, yeah,
What
the
is a
G,
sabbatical program?
so so I was on a panel for the Indianapolis Arts Council, and they partner with an external partner on this. But the Indianapolis Arts Council has a sabbatical program called Creative Renewal, and what they do is they pay for up to 3 months. No, actually, it's up to a year of some type of renewal program for the artists to either travel or to explore their creativity in a new way. And they talk about how that impacts them as an artist. And so it's not necessarily them going into a 9-to-5 job and just like doing things and being an arts administrator, but it was really like you get that we're giving you the money and the breath and the space to explore yourself as an artist and to use that to help with your creativity and your artistry.
it's kind of like a morphed Sister Cities program where they go off, they do something, they learn something. With Sister Cities, what we had them do when they come back is to be able to send in a report as to how it affected them, what happened. It
Mhm.
could be a twist on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a twist. I would say it's more of a twist on that because literally people would say, I want to go to the Bahamas and learn more about how rum is made and how that connects to my creativity as a visual artist. Right? It's really things in that. It's really like outside of the box type of things, not necessarily like an exchange that's happening. I see y'all looking at each other.
No, I understand, but like go back to if I morph the Sister Cities idea, it's going to another, not necessarily country, but another place, entity, whatever, finding out something about it, but with the idea of bringing it back. Now, with our Sister Cities program, we had it brought back to the community from which the artist started, and they had to invite people and have a presentation or a learning session with other people
Yeah,
to
it was
share what they
it was more
learned.
about the process and not the product. That's the thing, that's the difference. It was about the
Yeah.
process of how we create our artistry and how we build on our artistry and creativity versus like, here is something I'm presenting back to you all.
So it's a GOS fund, but for BIPOC organizations specifically, basically. That's one part of
Right,
it, correct?
right.
Okay.
So is Terrell, are you on?
I have a question.
I
Can,
have a question for Terrell though. So Terrell,
okay.
you've talked with Juanita about this before. So if indeed we had $750,000 to $1 million to spend in this BIPOC area, what's your view or insight or recommendations on if and how we might spend it?
There's a couple of ways. I do agree with Juanice's thoughts around it. One of the additional pieces, though, is making sure that there is something to, and I'm thinking more on the individual side, but making sure that we have a something in place where we can educate this community not only to CAH grants, but also to how to apply for grants, how to research grants, so making sure that we have a support piece in place so that once they get the money, and not telling them what to do, but if they need additional guidance, if they putting a support structure in place. So they could say, even if it's building a community where they can ask each other or they can get suggestions and meet that kind of thing. So I think for me, just thinking through it on the fly, it's a kind of two-pronged plan. But
I've looked at some of our seminar topics, and so it sounds like we've done stuff like this before, perhaps not as much, not as deep, or whatever. So it's not a brand new idea, but it certainly is putting more emphasis on that than perhaps we've done before. Am I understanding correctly?
Correct. And the second piece, I know that you had mentioned those three buckets, but I do think there is something there to look at the capacity building program. So even if that is reworking what that looks like, to Quanice's point, it's not a grant where they have to do a specific project, but it is supporting around topics that the other capacity building programs found useful. So even if it's something to give us a structure of things that they walk away from that we can do during this short amount of time, because last year the capacity grant started in June and wrapped up in October. So they were able to complete their meetings and do all the things with their takeaways in that year. So that may be another way to give that BIPOC piece some additional framework without taking away the flexibility of being able to use the funds in ways that their organization needs.
So this is capacity building for BIPOC organizations in particular?
Yeah. And again, I'm just kind of throwing out an idea so we can think about it. And
right, might we want to do any capacity building more broadly? Should that be it? Because I'm collecting up categories. My intention is to say, you've heard from the executive committee, now staff, you all figure out what works. So these are just our suggestions. So I've heard 5 categories for consideration: enhancements around public arts, that which is already given, but enhancing; a BIPOC fund or grant to do the sort of things that Quanice and Gretchen and Terrell have talked about; this DC Youth Arts Summit, which will also check a box on arts education, right? Enhancements of the other grants, not public arts, but the other grants that the committee that Gretchen oversees; and then capacity building. I'm not sure if that's a 5th category or if that's just part of the BIPOC thing.
So Reggie, the enhancements would be both public art artists and grants artists.
Right, but I was just being clear on the.
Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure, so it was all kind of looped together. Mm-hmm.
No, I had public art enhancements, BIPOC,
Okay.
Youth Arts Summit, grants enhancements, then perhaps capacity building. And the only ones we put some numbers around were the BIPOC thing and the DC Youth Arts Summit. But I'm okay if the executive committee is okay in giving that as input to the staff for them to, 1, figure out how much money do we have, and 2, come back with a recommendation to us of how we would spend the money across categories like that, or others that you may create. Or you may come back and say, no, we shouldn't do this, instead we should do that. So I'm
Hey, Reggie.
yes.
Yeah, it's Maggie. I'm sorry I'm on the train. It's a little loud, but I had put something in the chat, which was, is there a way to explore expanding the emergency support grants as an extension of the COVID support, since we know from the data that the sector is still struggling to recover and individual artists are struggling to recover. So that would be general operating grants. That's kind of a second wave of post-COVID while the creative economy recovers. That was just an idea that I put in the chat.
I'm sorry.
Really need it right now.
Right. So I'll make that a 6th area. for the staff to explore and come back to us on. But I wanted to just give the executive committee, on behalf of your committees, the opportunity to offer up to the staff. But they are really the experts. I'm happy for them to take this and do something with it. And either we can do the prioritization or we can defer to the staff to prioritize it.
And I can say,
I have a question.
yes, Gretchen, I'm sorry.
We got pushback on the BIPOC piece when we had the grants revamp meeting. And I think it was because it was not framed enough. So I would ask the staff to really look at framing it. Because when we first introduced it, the pushback was that we're just giving money out, carte blanche to anybody for anything. So I would ask them to work on the framing piece of it. And the second question I have is, can any of this be used to resolve our issue with Howard University?
Well, so I've been, just to put that together, yes, the Howard, we have the money to cover
You
Howard.
may need to back up, and now we get
Yeah,
everybody
okay.
tell the story.
And so there was an agreement that had been signed between Howard University and the commission in the last budget cycle. And David, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. To support the initiative, it was the Folk Life, I believe it's the initiative, Natalie Hopkins, and some of the research that had been done. Years ago, there had already been an effort or an initiative to lead something of this nature, this research that had been somewhat squashed, and this had been revamped. And we had, I believe the money they had gotten is through the NEA. Am I correct, David or Jeffrey?
Right. So the NEA, there's a $17,500 allocation of our NEA grant for this Folk Life initiative. And
we pitched in, the commission was to pitch in more money to bring that amount up to $50,000. So from what I understand, and as I've come into the situation, is that it was the mechanism, whether this was a purchase order, a contract, and was the money secure from NEA? It had been on our, I believe some of the money had been on our books that flowed over. Am I correct, David? Or was this two other issues from the NEA? Because we had another NEA issue that we had to, that we just cleared up, actually.
There's a slight misalignment between the NEA's year and our year.
Right.
So it's, their FY23 is really our FY24. That's when we spend the monies. So.
And so when everything was signed, it was too late to get the money out. So, and we cannot we can't backdate things on the government. But as of now, we're trying to figure out the mechanism. Will this be a purchase order? Will this be a contract? And I was just getting emails. I met with Natalie 2 weeks ago, Dr. Hopkinson, that is, 2 weeks ago, regarding the situation. I've spent the last 2 weeks kind of sifting through to see what mechanisms we can use and what the state of play actually is. So we do have a clear understanding. We had a clear understanding on Monday afternoon yesterday. And we're now trying to figure out, we do have the money, so we can pay them. So that's not an issue. Our hurdle is how to get the money to them. And so as soon as this is a priority of mine and has been for the last few weeks. So as soon as I can figure out how to get the money over there to them, they'll have it. But we have the money.
So in short, Gretchen, this extra money we're talking about here is not necessary to resolve the Howard issue. We have money to resolve the Howard issue. We're just trying to figure out where it will come from and, cross the T's and dot the I's.
Okay, great. So this has nothing to do with that. This is the money that has nothing to do with paying them and getting them straight. Okay, thank you.
So, and the issue, to my understanding, has never been us not having the money. That's never been the issue. It's getting the money with all the complications that surrounded that particular issue. And just a few more minutes on it. So the whole Folk Life thing is what Joy Ford Austin spoke to us about at the last commission meeting. You may recall her presentation of that and her request at the end for a level of funding from the commission. And I said at that point, sounds like a good program. We have to go away and look at how much can we fund it, if at all, and in what categories. And we're still trying to sort that out. That's the going forward piece. We want to clean up the back piece where they have a written document that suggests we owe them money and we need to find a way to pay that money. The money we have, but we have to figure out how to pay it to them.
Which is important now that we understand what that mechanism is, because we'll have to use that same mechanism
Going forward. Right.
And the mechanism wasn't determined when this whole thing started in the first place. So, but we are moving toward a solution.
So, good point. A seventh thing I can add to my list is this folk life.
That's right.
And as you may recall, Joy asked for over $1 million.
1.25.
$1.25 million. And we know we can't do that amount, but we may be able to do some amount. And I'm happy to give it to the staff to say, here are 6 areas that the executive committee are in agreement that if we have the money, we would like to provide it to these particular areas. We're not offering a prioritization. We'll leave it up to the staff to do the prioritization. But this is what we would bring to the table. And then the staff will do that thing and come back with us with the recommendation. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
So I'll repeat the 7 again, just, I don't think I'll take a vote just in case. The first is enhancements around public art. The second is the BIPOC fund, which we know needs to be clarified. The third is the DC Youth Arts Summit. The fourth is enhancements around the grants. The fifth is capacity building more broadly. So not just BIPOC, but broadly. The sixth is emergency support grants, as Maggie offered up. And the seventh is the Spoke Life initiative. So Jeff, help me. Should I have someone to turn that into a resolution that we vote on, or is that necessary, or what?
You want to vote on them all in block on just one thing, or take them
Yeah,
individually?
in one block. And then we can discuss once the motion is made, we can discuss, then I go through the roll call, right?
Yeah. So you can just say that you move consideration of those items as you just read.
As a recommendation.
Good. So I move that. Those are the 7 areas that we'd like the staff to consider in how any extra money that we discover can be spent. We've heard already from Gretchen on the BIPOC needs to be clarified. We've heard that we want to, well, we included emergency support grants. So I'm going to go person by person to make sure you have no questions or comments or concerns about these 7 areas. I'll start with Maggie.
For the record, I want to second the motion, or is it appropriate to do that since you've made it?
I don't think we have to second it, do we, Jeff?
Can.
Okay, well, thank you for seconding it. And now we're to the question. So Maggie, your reaction to these 7 areas?
I think it's a great list, Reggie. I'm aligned with presenting it.
Good. Quanice?
Yes, I'm aligned. I can also send a proposal to you all in regards to the BIPOC, just to clarify the framing of things too. So that could help.
Do you have one on the DC Youth Arts Summit as well?
Yeah, I have that as well. I can send for both.
Send both of those, that'll be great.
Thank you.
Kimber? I know she's having issues with the mute button. Kimber? I'll go on to Gretchen.
Yes.
Sorry, say that again. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
No, she's, I think she's leaving. I assume she was flying out today.
Kimber, we can hear you.
Oh,
I asked the question, Kimber, if you have any
thanks.
actions, concerns, issues with this list of 7.
All right. Hello?
Yes.
Sorry, guys.
So my question was, do you have any questions or issues or concerns or comments on this list of 7?
Do not.
Good. And Gretchen?
I'm fine with it.
Good. So now I should take the vote. And it's going to be what we just said. On the resolution or the proposal or the, whatever we call it, that we just put on the table that was moved by me and seconded by Gretchen. Maggie? A and A?
I'm in favor. Yes, thank you.
Gretchen?
Yes.
Juanice?
Yes.
Kimber,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, and Hector hasn't arrived. So good. So thank you. So we give that now to the staff and come back to us with what you're proposing more specifically. I just want to make sure that anything that came out of the committees was reflected in y'all's thinking.
And I would like to add that being new to the situation and hearing some of the input that you just added has added and given insight to the conversation that we had with the staff the other day around this. So this will help shape some of the ideas that we had. And I'm glad to be able to hear some of the priorities. And something else that I would, as someone who served on board of directors and been a CEO, but then also as an artist, there are things that even if through the priority list are not made into this particular situation, I think that these are all definitely things that as an artist, we need to be looking at for the future as well. So this,
So if not for this money,
yeah,
it should be in our thinking going forward.
surely it absolutely should be. And but definitely some of this is in thinking of this money. And I was happy to hear Maggie speak about particularly the relief.
Emergency support.
Yeah, because many of you may be aware that there was a bridge fund that was available to entertainment venues. And I've had 6 or so reach out to me who did not receive the funding. And of those 6, 2 this may be their last year open because they've not been able to come back, which is unfortunate. And the BIPOC situation, Quanice, as a person who, I'm a member of the Association for Fundraising Professionals, and the biggest conversation we've always had is how one walks in to raise money as a Black person versus someone who's not of color, and the difficulties and challenges that we face, especially if you're a Black BIPOC-led organization that is also serving Black and brown people of color. So thank you for this. This is very insightful.
And I agree, it's a good list. I mean, we meandered towards it, but I think it's a good list. So thank you for that input. 2 more agenda items. Just an update on the foundation. Jeff, would you do that?
So I've got a draft sort of mission statement that we can look at either today or later on. But since the council is wrapped up in the BSA work, they're not going to look at anything until June. So we're kind of in a pause with that. The other side of it is when we reached out to NASA, the Assembly of State Arts Agencies, they recommended we follow up with a couple of different of our colleagues, state arts agencies that have foundations to learn some more about them. And so I've been in conversation with several of them, and they all do different things. Their foundations are accomplished different, or were set up to accomplish different missions, but they are not necessarily, I don't want to say not successful, but they don't, they don't produce at a level necessarily that, is, I think what we've discussed of like, being almost like a partner like organization of that level. That doesn't seem to be sort of the case. So I don't know if that's something that to consider, how we move forward with ours, that, it may not be able to accomplish, some of the things that we were thinking about. Part of it is because it's, a foundation attached to a government agency, and it's, within art structures different from like the library foundation or the schools foundation, which is seen as a more charitable outlet for philanthropy. Is at least the feedback that we got from them. In one instance, the Texas Cultural Trust Foundation was established to originally create a statewide endowment trust fund for the arts that would help support the Texas Commission on the Arts and provide funding and everything. And it never made a dime, basically. And so the state legislature rewrote the laws behind it and turned them into more of an advocacy organization. So things to, to think about, and there's a lot of them apparently have like they exist, but only on paper in some states that, there may be a legislation or a statute that authorizes a foundation and it looks like it's there, but it's not actually there in practice in reality. Um, so that's kind of where we're at with that.
So where are we on the 501c3?
So that, according to what had discussed before, we have to get the stuff to council to get them to give the authorization that we can do this, and then, move forward with that. So we're waiting, I think, until we can get council behind it,
So,
which
so
is going to
any
require
update in your
legislation.
mind, any update in your mind around the timeline we should be looking at now?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be contingent on when we get out of the budget cycle, which should be in June, but in some years, in some recent years, it's been later in the summer that we finally got the final version of the BSA through, and that's just such a massive bill that it just takes up most of the bandwidth for the
Even if
council.
we assume it's late June, what
Mhm.
might the timeline look like after that?
Maybe we might hear something, might get some action in like September on legislation because there'll be, the August recess. If we got something in there in July, it would still have to go through a committee hearing and all that kind of process. So it would be probably in the fall before we saw something come up.
Is it the
That would
committee of the
be-
whole?
Yeah, it would go through the committee of the whole
Can I
since
speak
there
to
are
that?
oversight.
Can I want to, if we're looking at the timeline that you're setting, if any council member were to introduce it or put it, get it in committee, we'd have to just wait for the hearing date. And so if there's a space for advocacy on our part, then once it got to a hearing, we would ask probably the executive committee and the commissioners advocate to the chair so that they can set up. This is what's behind my question, because I'd like to have a sense of the rollout and when we can enter the process to advocate for it and have a plan together with that of who we're going to speak to, how we're going to deploy ourselves to speak to themselves. So the next time we report on this, Jeff, I really would like to see a timeline, and you can have a worst case, best case, whatever, but a timeline that says maybe we'll get this thing to them in July, maybe in September, and here's what happened. Is there anything we need to do in between that? What's the next step? How do we get to the 501c3? Because I want to make sure we don't run out of time before this art all week thing is prepared to kick off. So I need that specificity, even if it's with disclaimers around it going forward.
Okay.
So far it's us talking to each other. For the other executive committee members, questions, comments, reactions to where we are on the foundation? Silence is golden. So the last topic on the agenda is the May 19th Art Week event stakeholders meeting. So we've talked a number of times about this whole notion of, we've been calling it Bring Art Basel to DC. And for our own personal branding reasons, and because our relationship with Art Basel is not firmed yet, we're trying to dismiss with the Art Basel language. And so we've, for the time being, branded this as Art All Week to distinguish it from, but connect it to Art All Night. And what we committed to was to do some initial thinking about it, but not get too far out of the barn before we engage our stakeholders. One, because they would be contributors to this thing. The insight would be valuable. They may think of things we didn't think of, et cetera. Two, because we want their commitment and engagement and get them on board. And three, quite honestly, because we've heard some people that aren't quite sure this is what we want to do. Is this the best use of our resources, et cetera? So we want to get people together to start the conversation talking about it with a goal of hopefully launching this Art All Week in 2025. But it may take 2 years, if not longer, to get to that. So starting now, even though things aren't firm, to get people in the room and talk about it. We have over 30 people coming from a diverse set of stakeholders to the Phillips collection on Friday. And we are jointly doing this with Christy Whitfield at the DSLBD. I had to write it down. I can never remember those initials. DSLBD, who she and I are going to co-chair this thing. She'll talk about what Art All Night has been and what it wants to be going forward and how it could connect to what we're talking about here. She'll show video from Art All Night. I'll then talk about this expansion, umbrella, internationalization of Art All Night, which is local now. We think the combination of what we want to do more global and international with what is being done local is a nice sort of complement and brings yet more attention to artists so we can be yet more artist-centric and enhance the art field in DC, the nation's capital, with a global view now, not just a local view. So I'll talk about that. And then we'll show the video from the artist table that we did to show how we're already thinking about how do we really make artists at the center of the work we do, even more than we've done so far. And we're going to give instructions to the room of 5 questions around the possibility of this Art All Week idea that they're going to break into 5 breakout sessions. And if we have 50 people, 10 per breakout session, to go away and each take one of those questions. We have table facilitators from the commission. We have scribes from the commission that will go off and work with them. We have a meeting in 26 minutes with the table facilitators and scribes to make sure we're all understanding how we want to operate that thing. And then we come out of the breakouts, 40-minute breakouts. We'll come out of the breakouts and have each table, each team to do a report out on where they were. And then we will take that information and figure out what it says to us. Oh, no predeterminations of what will be said. We'll see what we hear. And we will lay out a process of, we're going to send out a survey to everybody afterwards. We're going to send out a summary of what was said to everybody afterwards. And then we plan to have multiple sessions like this because not everybody can come to the first one and people's thinking evolves over time. But our goal is to start in September with something in Art All Night that begins to have the feel of our destination for this Art All Week. And it may be just a small thing, but you know, if there's anything we can do this September around Art All Night that moves us in that direction, let's do it. But the plan is to really, in the 2024 Art All Night, to begin to start having it feel like Art All Week. And then by the time we get to 2025 to have that fully instantiated work. So that's both where we are and our thinking around this in this stakeholder meeting. We have 4 or 5 of the commissioners planning to come to that meeting. We didn't want to have more than that because then that makes it a public meeting, but I think we're okay with that. So if you have great interest in it, we can give you the preview and the review, but if we can keep it to the 4 or 5 that we have planning to come already, fine. If someone that we had on a list cannot come, they could be replaced by another commissioner. So we'll work that out and get back to everybody on that. But I guess my question is, does this make sense? Is this clear? Now, Gretchen, you've been one of the architects of this as well. Any reaction you have, you want to share, and then I want to open it up to the full executive committee for any questions or comments.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm definitely a proponent of what we're doing, but I just had thought that flew through my brain when you were talking about the Art Basel folks. Do we have any statistics on what Art Basel has done for Miami, the city, and the other towns that are involved in it, and also what it's done for the artists financially?
Yeah, we have that information, but I'm reluctant to share it for the same reason we don't have Art Basel presenting at this meeting, and it's premature to do that. But yes, that information is available. So the people can see.
I just wanted to make sure, because some people have been saying who don't know about it, you know, what does it mean to the city economically? What is, you know, for Miami? And I said, I don't have any statistics on that. So just in case it comes up, I just wanted to make sure we had it.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly say it's been tremendous and it's huge, and we can share that data with them, but I didn't want to bring that. If indeed we were further along with Art Basel, and if indeed Vincenzo was going to present and all that stuff, his video would say all of that, right? That they have that already packaged up. You can Google that, as a matter of fact. But we know that it could be a huge boost to DC. We also know that not everything about Art Basel has been glamorous and glorious. So what we want to do is to learn from both the good and bad that has come out of it so that we avoid the bad and amplify the good.
One thing that they did say in our meeting with them is, although it would be premature in a sense for them to be with us in this moment, we're fine with that. But it's a good thing that we're doing what we're doing now to
Right.
make sure that we're leading with community first.
Right, because their lesson learned was they didn't always
Yes.
do that,
Right.
and that was a problem with them. So us involved in the community before it's well baked, before it's written in stone, when it's really open for a conversation. Now you have to herd the cats, herd the butterflies a little bit, but I'd rather have that challenge than one that says we get to a point where now the community says, well, that's not what we want.
Right.
That's not what we really want. So I think
Hey, Reggie.
yes.
Yeah, just one thing to plant a seed with you for down the road. It might be interesting at some point to kind of at least brief the Greater Washington Partnership so that the business community can get on board with, helping to develop kind of destination, arts destination in the district. And it really kind of hooks into what Gretchen suggested, which I think is a good call out, which is if it's going to drive economic value for the city, then the JP Morgans that chair that partnership and others would have a vested interest in supporting our efforts. So I thought maybe down the road it might be something that we could present to them as a body and potentially even ask for their support, sponsorship, and help.
Exactly. You're exactly right. And one of the questions we'll ask in each of the breakout groups was, who else should be here that we didn't have here, either now or later? So this is beginning to answer that question. So David, if I could put you on the spot, could you share with the group who is coming? Not by name of the person, but by the organizations, just so that folks get a sense, because it's not until if there's somebody we really, really, really want there, we can try to reach them today or tomorrow if necessary.
Yeah, of course. So we have representatives from Theatre Washington, and I'll sort of do them sort of by discipline, as it were. So Theatre Washington, which is a service organization serving theaters and individual theater artists. Atlas Performing Arts Center, Theater Lab, Capitol Fringe, the Spooky Action Theater. So, theaters big and small. We have some visual art folks, the Chela Mitchell Gallery, Washington Studio School, the Nicholson Project, Smithsonian, Architect House.
If I can stop you there, so we have someone definitely coming from the Smithsonian and perhaps the Secretary himself.
Great.
Trying to clear his calendar to come, but somebody from the Smithsonian will definitely be here.
And then we have some representatives from Arts Education, Life Pieces to Masterpieces, Words, Beats, and Life, DC Youth Orchestra. So we have 36 entities signed up at the moment. So.
And before this meeting, we had someone from the Office of the Secretary confirmed, Alma confirmed from the Office of the Secretary. DC Secretary of State, that is.
So that's where we are. Maggie, any other reactions from you? Maggie. Juanice, any reactions from you?
I'm sorry,
I
Reggie.
think this is good.
I was asking you, Maggie, if there any
Sorry, Reggie, did you call on me, Reggie?
Yes, I was asking if there are any other reactions, Maggie, that you had to.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yes, thank you. I just think it's incredibly exciting, and I'm very I'm impressed by the list of people you've assembled. So congratulations to all who put that together. But it should be a great meeting. I look forward to hearing the report out from it.
Great. Juanice?
Same here. I'm excited to hear what comes out of the meeting, and thank y'all for organizing.
Great. Kimber?
Yep, I second all of that.
Gretchen?
Yep, I'm good. I'm finally good with everything.
Yeah, we like it. We like it. And I'm good as well. So having no other items to discuss, this concludes today's business. The time is now 4:12 and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.